Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 11 of, the Outdoor Adventure Hour. You can always tell it's the Outdoor Adventure Hour because Lupo changes all the branding around because I tend to forget. And since Lupo was on the podcast with me earlier, he was smart enough to change this before we got logged in. But yes, thank you for joining us today because we have a great conversation coming up on choosing the right caliber for the right job. And joining me as usual is Lupo here from Lupo Outdoors.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today on the Outdoor Adventure Hour. So last week, I selected this topic because it's a conversation I see a lot when I'm either on the different channels on Facebook or on different levels of social media, Instagram, YouTube. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to get a rifle for X, Y, and Z. Which caliber should I get?" And then we all know that we have calibers that have the hitter club on them, where like,
Yep.
oh, that's just a blah, blah, blah. That's just a 270 and it's a 6.5 need more and blah, blah, blah. And I am not in that club because I happen to love my 6.5 Creedmoor and my 6.5 PRC. But the question is you gotta excuse me, I was fixing my washer and dryer. I'm a little sweaty today. Um, the, the,
he
the,
literally was just in time for the podcast.
yeah, I was like, ah.
I take my
Um,
eyes off of him for just a little bit, and he disappears on me. I don't know why you'd want to fix it, your washer and dryer and actually do some laundry, but just say,
yeah. Hey, Vanessa Kitty joined us. Hi, Vanessa Kitty.
yeah. We also
Usually
also
she
joined
joins
in
about
Vanessa.
halfway through, but she's here at the beginning. That's awesome.
And also
So,
joining us out there, we have Krabby Turtle and Ricardo. I always screw that name up. Carmona. There it is.
hi, Krabby. Hi, Ricardo. Thank you guys very much for joining us today. So when when you're buying a new rifle or you're building a rifle, the question is I see this everywhere, and it's what caliber should I select if I want to do X, Y, and Z? Um, and that's what we want to talk about today. So we're going to focus predominantly on rifles. I'm not going to talk about shotguns because
Well, they're
it's kind of a
shotguns.
given. Yeah, 12, 20, 16, all the way down to 410, depending on what you want to do. Um, and we can talk about shotguns and your selection of shotguns at a later date. But today I want to talk about rifles. And we're going to talk everything from, .17 HMR all the way up to, like 300 PRC or 50 BMG or whatever. Because it's everything that people are like, oh, I'm just going to buy X, Y, Z and I'm going to use it for,
Well,
this, and this. And that becomes a problem because what I find, um, you can see what people are having a problem with by looking at what's used on the market. So the rifles that you see commonly on the market that are used for sale at a decent price, it's not necessarily that they're bad rifles, it's that often the person who bought them new made a bad decision.
well,
It didn't
I
fit
like
the
to say
needs.
choosing a caliber for anything, right, is a lot like playing pool.
Yep.
Sometimes you need just pure power, to do your break, and sometimes you need a little bit of finesse to make your shot. So, just because you're going to do something, the biggest, baddest thing out there might not be the best choice. Same thing with the other side, going down too small might be good for some things, but it's going to completely, screw you up for everything else. So you got to find that happy medium. When do you need the punch and when do you need the finesse?
Exactly. And there's so many things to take in consideration when you're purchasing a new rifle and trying to define your caliber. Um, the, everybody goes, well, what are you going to use it for? God, I don't know, maybe pig hunting, and I might go after some deer, and I want to do some long range, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. That defines your caliber that you want to do. Here's an example. I got an RPR, a Ruger Precision Rifle. I always thought it was funny when people go, I got a Ruger RPR. So you got a Ruger Precision Rifle? I don't know. Somehow that tickled me. I'm like, so good. They named it twice. Uh, so I got my RPR at a really, really good deal. It was marked used at my gun store that I go to, my gun club, where it's my shooting range, and I have a membership there. So when I went there, it was displayed. It looked brand new, and it was in 308. Now, I already have several rifles in 308, so when I'm doing reloading, I know that this was a good process to go with. But I also know that eventually I want to move up to a 6.5 Creedmoor for another reach, for a longer range. And the cool thing that, and most people know this, but for those who don't know, if you buy a rifle, like, with a Magpul cartridge or any type of cartridge for the rifle, and it's in 308, to go to 6.5 Creedmoor, all you have to do is change the barrel. The action and the cartridge will hold the 6.5 Creedmoors. So
You're talking about the
I ended,
magazine,
yeah, the
not the
magazine.
cartridge, the magazine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I meant. You know what I meant. And
I
if you're
know what you meant.
listening, you know what I meant. So what was really cool about that is I found the guy, and when he got his RPR, he got it through the police station. He was he was a sheriff, and he got a 6.5 Creedmoor RPR barrel with his 308. Well, he goes, well, I'm going to keep the 308, and I just want to sell the barrel. So he sold me the barrel for $200. Ruger
That's
sells
a
it for
sweet deal.
600. It was a
Yeah, that was
great
a
deal,
sweet deal.
and it was brand new, still in the packaging, never used. So all I need to do is get a go no go cartridge fit. I've already got a barrel vise, and when I'm ready to switch over to 6.5 Creedmoor, I'm already there. I don't have to. I have my rifles exactly the way I want it, scope, everything, and I can just swap. Now I can swap at any time I want. If I'm like, I wanted to just shoot it in 6.5 Creedmoor for a while, it's about a 15-minute process to switch the barrels. So when you're thinking of cartridges, one of the things that you need to think about is reloading. And I thought about that when I started buying some rifles last year. I bought a 308, a Savage Access 2 XP in 308, and I bought one in 30-06. And then I bought my Benelli Lupo in 300 Win Mag. Now, why did I choose those cartridges? That level of cartridges gives me the spectrum I would need if I ever chose to go hunting, from basic things like, deer up to moose and grizzly bears. And I can use the same bullet. They're all 30
Yeah.
caliber bullets. So basically, in a nutshell, all I would have to do is have the different brass, but I could buy the specific bullet in 30 caliber that I really like and use it for all three guns.
Because
So
that gives you
think
the most
about
amount
that.
of flexibility. Is basically
Yes.
where you're going. Is if you think about it, the most amount of flexibility in a gun. But we were talking about 6.5 Creedmoor versus 308. Just before we got on, I was showing Lupo my new toy, which I have a pristine action that I'm going to be playing with.
I don't want to say I'm
It's
jealous,
a
but damn it, I'm jealous.
it's a short action. And it's got a 308 bolt face to it, so that way I can go from 6.5. I can do 308 or 6.5 out of this thing. If I change the bolt face, I can do a couple of other calibers, all out of that same thing. And all I got to do is rebarrel. And since this is, this particular one's a 700 action, but it uses a Ruger barrel system, or not Ruger, Savage barrel system, I just put my go gauge in, close it, pull my barrel up, tighten it up, and I'm good to go. So definitely look at what the most amount of flexibility that that right
Exactly.
this action is going to give me a lot of flexibility. It's just like if you have your AR, whether you want to shoot 223 or 556, depending on which way you go, it's basically we're talking about the same cartridge with some minor differences in pressure. Um, or you want to shoot 300 blackout, it's the same thing, right? You're still using the exact same magazine, you're still using the same bolt carrier. So, but there is a difference between when you would use your 223 or 223 or your 300 blackout, right? They got different purposes. The same thing when you go up into your 30 calibers. 308 is a tried and true caliber. It just doesn't have the range,
Exactly.
right? So you got to think about it. Like where I grew up in Pennsylvania, we went we went hunting. 100-yard shot was a long shot for us because the joke I like to say is, what at 100 yards we're rethinking our shot because at 101 is a house. We shot, lower powered, 30 at 6 and 30-30 Winchester, right? Just depending on what guns we were taking out. When I moved to Montana and I started hearing people taking elk at 600 yards, I'm like, "Wait, are you guys nuts?" That was something completely different for me because I'm sitting there going, my calibers have lost all punch at 600 yards, right? I mean, that's not an appropriate caliber for hunting out here. So these people are shooting 300 Win mags. Some are shooting 7 millimeter
Hmm.
mags. It's good to understand what you're going to use the gun for. And then sometimes you might need to buy two guns, right? I mean, the one gun might not give you everything else. And it looks like DJ Play Nice is out there, man. Hey, brother, it has been a long time since I've seen you, man. Thanks for joining us today. Um, so so when you're thinking about this, Lupo, you're thinking about your purpose of your gun because you've bought. I know all the purchases that you've made. You've made these
Yeah,
purchases
because I call
for
you
very
every time I
specific.
do.
Every time you buy something, you tell me. But you buy these things with a specific purpose in mind. So
I
go
do.
through some of the stuff. I know you just got your 6.5 PRC, which that was a extremely specific purchase. That is just for your long range shooting. But
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
So the 6.5 PRC, I actually flew to Oregon to pick up that rifle, and the Mike, the guy I bought it from, is also ex-military sniper, and he teaches long-range shooting. So he actually gave me some lessons on that rifle. So all we shot were the hand loads that he does. So he has a specific hand load, and he gave me the recipe for that rifle. And the rifle is just the coolest looking rifle ever. It's kind of like a dead skin gray with like a kind of like a fluorescent green mixed in, and it looks like a zombie rifle. So Jason actually ended up naming it.
Nate,
Yeah,
it,
I
that
was
was a
calling it
long
my.
that
Go
was a
ahead.
long text chain. That was a long text chain when we named that rifle.
Yeah,
Most
because
of the
I was
time,
like,
I was just screwing with Lupo and just screwing with him. Somehow we ended up with a name. Um,
because I was calling it a zombie, and he goes, you should name it Rob with an S, zombie. I said, yeah, but Rob Zombie's already taken. He goes, well, you could call it Rob's Zombie Slayer. And I went, and it's named. So my rifle is now Rob Zombie Slayer.
but
But
see,
let me
but
point
see,
out
we got
why.
to take the S and make it a Z though, right? So it's
Rob's
Rob,
with a
R O
Z.
B
Yeah.
Z. Yeah.
All right. So that's the new name. So the reason why I wanted this rifle is I'm getting really into long range shooting, and I have specific rifles for long range shooting. including down to 22 long rifle because I want to get into 22 LR, and I got a Ruger Precision rimfire, and I was lucky, and I got the American flag version, so it's all painted American flag. Uh, excuse me. So everything I buy for a purpose, and in the back of my mind, I think about the uses. So my 6.5 PRC rifle is designed for both long range shooting. Um, uh, I on that rifle, I hit 1,219 yards, 1,219, 1,218 yards. And the furthest I had ever shot before I went to Oregon was 100 yards because I'm a shotgun shooter. So day one, I went from 100-yard sighting in to 350 yards, and then we worked on technique and type and trigger control and tightening my groups. The second day, we went more into tightening my groups and getting it defined. And then I went from 350 yards to 1,218 yards. I think it was 1,218 or 1,219.
But,
It's just
but
one
why did you
different.
choose 6.5 PRC? I mean, why not a 6.5
Well,
Creedmoor? Why did you go with 6.5
so
PRC for that?
because it has more punch, I can go farther with this. So I could potentially do a mile shot with a 6.5 PRC, which would be very difficult with a 6.5 Creedmoor. So I wanted that extra. But see, I also have a 300 Win Mag with my Benelli Lupo.
Yep.
That I don't have a bull barrel on the Benelli Lupo. It's a thick barrel, but it's not a bull barrel.
It's
So
more set up for hunting than it is for long range shooting.
the Benelli Lupo is absolutely set up for hunting, but there's a shooting school in Texas that uses the Benelli Lupo and 6.5 Creedmoor, and they shoot 1,000 yards all day long with it. So it's not that it's not possible with that rifle. I mean, this is a heavy fluted barrel, fluted bolt. It's got a custom trigger, custom everything, and I mean, the scope is like a $3,500 scope. It's a very nice rifle. So I wanted something with that extra kick that's designed where I could go from long range shooting or hunting. So I can hunt larger game with that. So I went with that barrel, and I worked out a deal with Mike. Mike turned out to be a phenomenal guy. His family were spectacular. They put me up in their house and fed me and took care of me and just were wonderful, wonderful people. So Mike, if you're watching this, thank you so much for your hospitality. You were amazing. Great guy. Now he also let me shoot some of his suppressed guns. I'm gonna be on my channel. I'll be putting up a video of our fun day as well as the long range things. Now that I've moved in, I'm setting up my PC and I'll start editing that whole video and putting that up. But I got to shoot a 50 Barrett's 50 BMG, and I annihilated a water bottle with that. So that was my first time ever shooting something that large, and oh my God, it's cool. So
Well, and
check out my channel for
kind of
that.
goes
But
back. That kind of goes back to my whole thing about, sometimes you need the punch and sometimes you need the finesse. People might be go,
exactly,
okay, I'm just going to go out and buy a 50 BMG, and I'm going to just shoot long range because it's big bullet, lots of powder. When actually a BMG is not the greatest for long distance.
I mean, a lot of competitive shooters use the 50 BMG, but they're all
Yeah,
customized. Right? It's not just like, oh, I just bought a Barrett and now I'm going to shoot 2 miles. No, I mean, they have tremendous scopes, and then they customize the living crap out of that rifle. So it goes back to what do you want to use it for? Like my survival rifle that I have. And part of the thing you need to understand is people like, oh, I'm just going to buy a 338, Laputa, and then that's what I'm going to use. And I'm like, you have any idea how much each round's going to cost you? When you're talking about, oh, I don't have a lot of money to spend on the scope and all that stuff, I'm like, then you're never going to shoot the gun because you're talking $3 to $5 a shot. You know, and then if you want to hand load that, you're gonna have to buy all the new gear for that, and then buy the brass. It's you have to think about what your budget is, because you could buy the best rifle in the world, but if you can't afford to shoot it, it's a dust
Yeah.
collector. So
Yeah.
like my
Fading it
survival
becomes a
rifle,
problem.
yeah, my little Badger, which is my little survival fold-up rifle, I purposely got that in .17 HMR, because I want speed. It's a very, very fast round, and it's a single shot, and it's a great little survival rifle. People are like, well, why didn't you get in 22 Magnum, or why didn't you get in 22 long rifle? I'm like, the .17 isn't that much more expensive. You obviously can't reload these, but the thing that you always have to remember is, if you're ever going to use something for hunting, or survival reasons, speed kills. The faster the bullet, the more damage it does when it passes through the target. When you look at any ballistics test where they have the ballistics gel, and you see them shooting the bullet through the ballistics gel, and you see this huge eruption, in the cavities, that's predominantly because of the speed. The speed creates that, hypershock. So the .17 is such a tiny little bullet. It's basically the shell casing of a 22 Magnum with a smaller bullet, and it works great. You get very decent range off of it, and that speed. If I have to hunt and I got one shot at a time, I got to make sure I can put the thing down on my first shot. And then my competition rifles, I went 22 long rifle, because that's where most of the competitions are for the rimfires. They don't go into the 22 meg or the .17s, or I would have done that.
So, real quick, thinking about specific purpose. Let's do a little bit of an exercise here. So, if I'm going to do, let's say, small game hunting, okay, what calibers would we use for like small game hunting?
All right. So if somebody sat there, and by the way, Ricardo was like, he knows that some barrels have different harmonics. Oh my God.
Very
You
much
could
so.
buy the same barrel from the same manufacturer, buy 5 of them, and they're all 5 going to be a little different in their harmonics. So you're absolutely spot on there. So for small game hunting, there's things you have to consider. How available is the ammo? That is your first consideration for anything, right? Like, oh, I want to do like 6 was a 6 dash, a 6 dasher. Well, finding that ammo isn't easy. I can't go down to Bass Pro Shops or my gun shop and just grab it off the shelf. I can get 22 long rifle everywhere. And then 22 Magnum is fairly accessible, and .17 is also fairly accessible. So if I'm going to just do plinking I want a rimfire and it's just going to be plinking, your obvious choice is 22 long rifle. It's the least expensive, most available. But if I'm going to use it for hunting, 22 long rifle is great for prairie dogs and rabbits. But when you start getting into larger game, you want that faster bullet. So you would have to go to 22 Magnum or a .17. I want the .17. It runs faster. So when if I hit my target, and you're not going long range with any of these, you got to think, I want to make sure I take the animal down if I have to hunt. So if I'm going like 100 yards with a rimfire, my chances of not having the energy to put it down when it gets there is higher. But that's why I went with the .17. It's a faster round, so I have that chance.
So,
But if you're going to do small animals, 22 long rifle.
because I'm thinking, back when I was a kid, we had 30-06 accelerators, which were super fun bullet to play with. So if you don't know what a 30-06 accelerator is, it's a 30-06 round with a sabot to put basically a 223 into it. So you're talking about a bullet that's traveling at it's like 4,000 feet per second, right? And if you would go out gopher hunting with that thing, you hear the whole thing about pink mist.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's running so fast and it dumps all that energy right when it hits.
Go get your
Um,
gopher. What gopher?
yeah, yeah. There's not much left of that thing. So I mean, that's where you go into it. I mean, that was used for. Let's face it. It was not hunting as much as it was for pest control back then.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, now going forward now, what 40 years. There's a lot of other things like 17-inch MR that's out that has become popular, like Lupo was talking about. Those are really great calibers for that. Um, because you have a smaller rifle, a lighter rifle, instead of carrying around a really heavy 30-06. So that's kind of where it's important to pick your caliber for it. If you're doing varmint hunting that is pest control, you
Right.
don't really care if there's much left. Now, like Lupo was talking about, that was a survival rifle. There's a reason why, you want whatever you hit to survive. Well, you want it dead, but you want the meat left so that you at least eat off of it. That's
Right.
where
Exactly.
I was kind of going with this thing. Is it's a little more appropriate of a caliber. I've heard of people that decide to go take their ARs out for a walk. I'm like, okay, great. What were you hunting? Like deer? I'm like, no, no. They're like, you could you could take a deer down. You might be able to take a tail down. There's this thing about whether it's ethical to do
Right.
it that way because
Now, that being said, I would absolutely use a 223 for hogs,
yeah,
wild boar and coyotes and groundhogs. The perfect ground for those. You could accurately shoot up to 1,000 yards with the 223 if you have the right rifle set up. But I know people who go out there with their AR-15s and do wild hogs. Because sometimes what you're trying to do is eliminate like a whole pod. So you want that semi-automatic rapid fire. Or sometimes, like with my little Badger, which I freaking love that gun. It's just a little fold up, and it's just the coolest thing in the world. But that's a single shot. It's just a single shot survival rifle.
yeah,
So um, it you the cartridge makes a difference. So I also know that people use 6.5. Now you could take a deer down very easily with a 6.5 Creedmoor, but I really wouldn't go any higher than like a whitetail because
yeah.
a mule deer would be questionable with a 6.5. A whitetail, anything less than a whitetail, a 6.5, it's not a problem. Bless you.
Thank you. I got the mute on time with that one. Um, yeah, and that's the thing is if you're looking at doing this stuff, you want to think about the ethics of it. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you really should. It's one of those things of you want to make sure that whatever you shoot, you're I mean, you're hunting this thing so you can eat it. You want to make sure that when you hit, that animal goes down and does not suffer, right? It's one of those things of choose what you're gonna whatever you're gonna use this thing for. Make sure you make the right decisions,
Exactly.
um, because if you don't, it's unethical. It's really it's just wrong, right? Let's just face it, it's just
Exactly.
wrong.
Now, to continue with calibers, um, so we talked about varmint control and so forth. analyze what you're going to doing. So one of my absolute favorite caliber to have is the 308. And I know people are like, oh, 308, it's outdated, blah, blah, blah. One, the ammo is relatively available everywhere you go. So in a pinch, if you need like ammo, you're going to find 308 before you find basically anything else aside from
Yeah.
22 long rifle. Two, there's a reason why they call the 308 a deer slayer. More deer have been taken down with 308s than any other caliber. So if you have to survive off of something, you're going to have a lot more ammo. It's a lot cheaper than the other rounds out there, like aside from rimfires. That for center fire cartridges, the 308 is a great all around cartridge, inexpensive, easy to reload, and in a pinch, you're going to be able to survive with that rifle. The
Well,
only
and that's the thing.
drawback to that is they often do 308s in pencil barrels, so there's a high
Yeah.
kick for it. But aside from that, I mean, so hunting rifles have to be light. So, like my Savage Axis 2 has a pencil barrel, unthreaded, um, and there's a kick on that. But if you know how to handle your recoil, it's not bad. It's not horrible.
Well, the other thing is the one thing I like about 308 is, I mean, if you're going to go, hog hunting, you can do 223, but you can also use 308 for hog hunting, all the way up to up into those deers. And I know some hunters here in Montana that they've taken elk with a 308. Now
Absolutely.
it's a short range shot, but you can take elk. So I mean, the 308 has such a wide variety that you can do. I mean, I wouldn't use a 308 for going out groundhog hunting.
Hmm.
I could, but I think that's a little bit of a waste. But
Yeah.
that the some of these 30 calibers are just so great. They just hit such a wide range of things that you can do with it that it makes a great decision for it. Now,
Absolutely.
then you know now we talked about the small game. Then we talked a little bit about, we'll say, mid-sized game, right? Because those
Hmm.
30 caliber rounds are really good for that. Now let's talk a little more high end game. I mean, you were talking about this is your moose, your bear, stuff that, well, I mean, let's face it, a bear can be a little dangerous. That's something
A
you
little.
don't, yeah, a little bit. I mean, this is something you want to make sure you have a bullet that hits hard.
Right.
Talk a little bit about where our decisions would go from that. Let's just say, hey, I got my granddad's 30-06, and I'm going to go out moose hunting with it, or I'm going to go out bear hunting, or I'm going to go out hiking with my, take my gun for a walk, and I'm in bear country. Talk a little bit about decisions there, about why that may or may not be a good decision.
So here's the kick that everybody needs to understand. It's if you're ever going to go out in the wilderness, you have to keep in mind what the wildlife is in that specific area. So in the lower 48, 308 is fantastic. 30-06, fantastic. 30-06 is a hard hitting round. 300 Win Mag, extremely hard hitting round and really great for distance. I lived in Alaska for a couple of years, and a lot of people carried lever action 30-30s. But depending on where you live, if you're in deep downtown, you don't have a whole lot of bear activity. But if you're
Yeah,
just outside of like in Juneau, if you're like over like in the Thunder Mountain area, or if you're in Anchorage and you're over in like the outskirts of Anchorage, um, bear and moose come to your yard all the time. And moose are very pretty and they're very neat to watch, especially when they have babies. And they are immensely dangerous. Immensely dangerous. I have seen moose chase people down and trample them. And if you get a bull moose with horns, they will kill you very quickly, and before you can even say this was a mistake. So my father before he passed away. And when he passed away, he left me his gardening gun. So when he would go out into his yard and tend to his trees and tend to his garden, he carried a specific firewall. That firewall was in a shoulder holster, and it was a
Firewall?
what did I say?
You said firewall. Your
Well,
your day
cybersecurity.
job is
Yeah, it is.
overrunning your gun talk.
His firearm, his gardening firearm. Beg your pardon. So his gun, carry gun, when he was out in the woods or whatever, was a 4.54 Casull, which I now own, and it's a freaking hand cannon. It's a massive.
Yeah.
But that Casull, at close range, pretty much take anything down. It's just one step down from a 50 cal. Now in in Alaska, they have they have things called bear kits, and it's got bear mace and a short barreled 50 caliber revolver. And you need that there, but would you need that here in the lower 48? Not so much. When you're dealing with Kodiaks and grizzly bears, yeah. But when you're here with black bears and brown bears,
See, and that also depends though, because in the lower 48, in the northern Rockies here, you might want that because we still have grizzlies here. So
yes,
even then, you still need to realize, like, growing up in Pennsylvania, we were used to black and bear or brown bears. It's not, that's what it is. And then coming out here to Montana, these bears are damn big. I mean,
yes.
even the black the black bears here, they're a lot bigger. Um,
Ironically,
and
my
then
first experience with a bear ever was in Montana when I lived in Bozeman. We
yeah,
went up into the hills and like, oh, a bear. you know.
yeah, and that's the thing is, just because you're used to things like for me, growing up in Pennsylvania and hiking through Pennsylvania, um, I might not have a rifle with me. I'd have a pistol. It was a 9 millimeter. 9 millimeter out here in Montana is going to get you eaten. Um,
Yeah.
you come across a grizzly with a 9 millimeter, I don't care, man. You dump that mag, that thing is still coming at you.
People say,
But
well, I'll just shoot it in the head. I said, have you seen how thick a grizzly bear
it's
skull
skull,
is? A
yeah.
9 millimeter isn't going to penetrate. You will
Better hope to
piss
get
it
the
off.
eye.
You
Yeah,
know,
better hope you get
yeah,
the
it's
eye. That's about
you're
it.
like, oh yeah, and then people are like, I'll just use a handgun and shoot a deer with a handgun. I can definitely kill it. And I'm like, just don't. It's not
Yeah,
ethical.
just don't.
But another really good round that people ignore, you got people who are big fans of it, is the 270.
Yeah.
That's a really hard hitting round. And if you're going for like large wild boar, um, or you're going to go for like mule deer and elk, 270, that's a really good round. That's a one shot round.
Yeah, a lot of people overlook the 270.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is, several times the military has looked at coming out of 5.56, because they're like, it doesn't do what we want. It's so funny. They go from the 30 calibers down to the 22s, and now they're like, well, now we got to do something else. It's like, yeah, you got to go back up. The Was it the six? I forget what it is. Is it 6.2 or 6.8? Six. I think it's 6.8 spec two. It's basically a 270 bullet sitting inside of a 30 caliber shell there.
Yep.
So I think people underestimate the 270 by a lot.
Yeah. I have one rifle that's chambered in 270, and it's a Remington 700 barrel in action, heavy barrel. And the stock was replaced with an Archangel stock. And I got it for $400 used, and that's a nice rifle. Um, but it's something I wanted to play around with a little bit. Um, the my 6.5 PRC and my 6.5 Creedmoors that I have, like I built a 6.5 Creedmoor long range rifle by getting the Hawa 1500 SA in 6.5 Creedmoor with the bull barrel, and then buying an MDT stock and then putting a nice scope on it, and then customizing and adding features to it. And
That's an
it shoot
amazing entry level build right there,
it
right? I mean,
was
you have
cheap
a
and
barreled
fun.
action, and it's just ready to go, man. Just like you just got a couple things to do, and now you have a gun that you put together. It's kind of like your gateway. Yeah, that's the kind of like the gateway drug for customizing
Dude,
guns.
I call the Hollow 1500 bolt actions and bolt and barrel actions because they're so cheap. I said that's the gun builder's crack, because it gets you started, and then the next thing you know is like you can't stop building. And I mean, like Browning still has them on sale for 429 or 430 for the barrel in action and that's the heavy barrel. Why would you not do that?
Yeah. So DJ Play Nice brought up a really good question. We've been talking about a lot of neck down cartridges. And no, DJ, we did not cover this. There are
No.
states that you have straight wall cartridges. Last week on my podcast, Mike Kreitzer from MK Outdoors, he's in Ohio. It's a straight wall. So
Yeah.
yeah, there are some considerations, and a lot of us that get a chance, that don't have that restriction, we tend to forget about straight wall cartridges. Um, and I'll be honest with you, I am completely ignorant of it because I have never lived in a state that required a straight wall cartridge. What's your
It,
thoughts on
it
that?
it really, really limits what you're allowed to do. And I don't really understand the states that require that, except for to make it more difficult on you. And the states that don't want you to have firearms, Democrats, really focus on things of how can I price you out of it, and how can I make it so difficult you just give up. And there's no other logical reason. But there are a bunch of straight wall cartridges that really pack a punch. One of them is the freaking elephant gun. You want to take down
Yeah,
an elephant? It's a straight wall cartridge. So legally you could use that in that state. It's like, where'd you hunt? Well, I went after elk. Okay, straight wall
was there
cartridge.
anything
Great.
left? Yeah,
Well, no, here's the key though, honestly. So let's say you're lined up on that elk, and then an oil tanker comes between you and the elk. You got it.
I just shoot. Yeah, yeah, yes, yes, you
But
do.
yeah,
But
it's
what were you doing
isn't
shooting over
300
a road?
blackout? Isn't 300 blackout a straight wall cartridge? I'm not really.
No, it's still
It's
necked.
tapered, right?
300. Yeah, it's tapered. So 300.
Yeah.
It's slightly tapered, but it is. Um, it's funny. As we're talking, I'm googling it.
Hi, She Fires. I don't know if you're still here. But yeah, so when you start looking at the different cartridges, you got to understand it. Now, when you start talking things like long range shooting, now you're talking match grade ammo, and that increases your cost tremendously. But it depends on if you're going to be doing competition or if you're doing it for fun. And if you're doing it for competition, um, find out what the pros are using commonly. Also, look at an ammo that's easy to reload. You don't want to waste
Yeah,
your brass. Um, but for like long range, the favorite for things like 2 miles out without going, excuse me, into 50 caliber BMGs is a 338. And it's not impossible to reload. It's not a really difficult reload. But when you start looking at things like the 6 Dasher, which people use for long range competitions, and it's a great round, don't get me wrong, but it's a bear to reload, no pun intended. And so a lot of people are like, the only way to do the 6 Dasher is by modification, case modification and reloading. And it's kind of more trouble than it's worth, right?
yeah,
So um, look at what your budget is. Look at what the skill set is. If you're going to do competition, analyze what's going to be your best competition. Remember, a lot of people say buy once, cry once, right? That's a great
Yeah.
rule of thumb. So you need to understand what cartridge is going to fit you best. Like I have a match grade competition bench rest rifle in 6.5 Creedmoor, and the barrels are this freaking thick. They're massive. The barrels weigh about 25 pounds each, and it came with two barrels. And it's got the flat surface, and it's designed, to move forward. And the scope on that rifle is a $6,000 scope. And, it's like a 6 to 60 Genesis, and it's a great setup. And it's designed specifically, for long range, extreme long range shooting and bench rest only. This is not, you're not, there's no tripod mount for this. You throw it on the bench rest and it's, you know. So analyze what you need to use it for. Is it going to be strictly hunting? Then focus on the game that you're going to hunt and the best round that fits that game at the best budget price. Is it going to be a combination of plinking and varmint control? Analyze your range on that specifics. So, for instance, if you're going to I was like, I have groundhogs and it's disrupting my cattle. All right, well, 22 long rifle might just fit your purpose perfectly, or a 223 might even fit it better because of the range differences. And maybe you have
Yeah.
coyotes and you have groundhogs, right, and ground squirrels, right? The
You can take.
223 is going to take all of them out.
Yep.
So, and the rounds are cheap and easy to reload. So, analyze what you're going to use it for. If all I'm going to do is a plinking gun, I'm just going to buy a budget 22 and just go out and shoot cans and have a good time. That's a great thing to do. Why not? And if you enjoy it and that's all you're going to do, 22 long rifles cheap, easy to come across, and you don't have to invest a ton into the firearm. You can go to Bass Pro Shops right now and get a 22 long rifle for under $200.
Yeah.
There you go, right? Um, Now, if you are a big game hunter, you need to start looking at things like 300 Win Mag, the 270. You got to look at these power rounds, 30 odd six. But when you start looking at things like, so 300 Win Mag is great for long distance shooting, but the power that it has at medium range to take down game is tremendous. It's you got a grizzly, that 300 Win Mag is going to take it down if you place that shot correctly. The last thing you want to do is wound a grizzly
Yeah. That's
ever.
that's all kind. That's all kinds of bad.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah. So I know this was primarily rifle, but we have a little bit of times. I do want to switch it up a little bit to pistol
She
because
fires. She's still here.
there are there are some choices to be made when you're talking about pistols. Again, it goes down to what are you going to use it for? Your self defense.
Yep.
There's a lot of arguments, and that's the thing. No matter whether you're a pistol shooter, rifle shooter, shotgun shooter, whatever, if you're slinging a projectile, there's going to be an argument about whether the caliber you're shooting is the correct one or not.
Right.
Um,
Well, what would
going
you personally use for self-defense on a pistol? What caliber?
well, it depends. Am I talking two legs or four legs?
Two legs.
Because there's a difference, right?
There is
So
a huge difference.
two legs. I use 9 millimeter. There was a
Mhm.
while there I was carrying 40, and just like everybody else, I kind of jumped on the 40 craze and then went back to the 9 millimeter. Um, just mostly because it's easier to control. You get a lot of capacity out of a 9 millimeter, and the stuff that they're doing with compact 9 millimeters is just insane with the amount of bullets that they're jamming into those things. But like when I was in FFL and I had people who go, "Well, I'm going to go out hiking, and I'm worried about bears." I'm like, 10 millimeter Glock all day long, right? The Glock is going to run. It's going to run well. Sure, it's ugly, um,
Yeah.
but it works. And the 10 millimeter hits pretty hard. So, those are the things that you start looking at is what are you going to use it at? I have no problem if somebody wants to carry a 40. I have no problem if somebody wants to carry a 45. It is up to you and how well you think you can shoot to defend yourself. But when you're getting out into the woods, you're starting to think about
Mhm.
larger calibers. Your 10 millimeters, your 357s, your 41s, your 44s, even the 500. It just depends on what you're going to use it for. Um, are you going to shoot a Smith and Wesson 500 all day long? No, you're going to shoot that thing a few times, and you're going to be tired. Uh,
Yep.
but there's really nice holsters. You can put it right on your chest, and it's just right there if you need it because it's going to have a
Mhm.
barrel about that long. Um,
Yeah, my holster, I carry. I have a concealed carry permit here in Florida. Although in Florida now, you have permitless carry, which is great. Um, and I carry a Glock 43 because it fits perfectly in that chest holster. So it's my bag. It has my driver's license, all that in there, and then I can just yank it down, grab, and pull out immediately. And I can hold two clips in there and my knife as well. But it's like I also carry 9 millimeter, and for similar reasons, it does have good knockdown power. It's not as good as a 45 ACP, um, but a
but
45 ACP is a much bigger gun. You know,
the thing is that there's a lot of arguments about that, right? Shot placement versus capacity, right? I mean, that I'm not even going to get into that, but the thing is that ammunition has changed, whether it's rifle or pistol ammunition. The technology has changed. We are getting so much more out of a cartridge now than we did 10 years ago,
without
right?
question.
I mean, it's still running the same speed, but the shape
Mhm.
of the bullet, whether it's I run Hydroshocks. I like the Hydroshock for
I have
personal
those too
protection.
in my personal protection. Now I stagger my rounds. So what I'll do is I'll do a hard point, and then I'll do a hydro shock, and then a hollow point, and then a hard point, a hydro shock, and a hollow point, and I'll stagger those throughout the magazine. Um, and then like I also have a Judge Taurus, a Taurus Judge, which I really actually like. I like it a lot, and that's my. I use that a lot when I'm fishing because I'll have hydro shock or hollow point. Uh, uh, Colt 45 longs in it, staggered with 410 shotgun shells that have
Yeah, I was
a
I was going to
conical
ask you that.
and balls, double out balls. So I'll stagger it, and here in Florida, you're allowed to open carry if you're camping, fishing, or hunting. As long as you're going to while you're there and coming back, you can carry
See,
openly.
see here in Montana, we just strap it on and
Yeah,
go.
yeah, Montana and Gare. When I lived
We just
there and
strap it on and
I
go.
was like 10 and a half, 11 years old when I lived in Bozeman, and I saw people carrying, firearms everywhere. People were walking to the bank, nobody would twitch.
No one
And
ever
I
took it.
never
Yeah.
heard of anyone ever being mugged. You know, go
It's
figure.
amazing how that happens, right?
Yeah, my dad used to say, an armed society is a polite society.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
and that's the thing. We've talked about all these calibers, and then um, we never really. I mean, we kind of talked about the bullets, but we really didn't talk about the bullet design. Just because you have a caliber that might be on the edge, right? It, it's just there, but it's not. It might not be quite as ethical. Well, it depends on the ammo that you're going to put it into it because you're just gonna you're just sorry. I just saw this comment pop up, and I got long range reaper. You Montana men are about strapping it on.
So, for people that are watching,
That's and
this is Mike.
that's
This is the
Mike.
person I got my Zombie Slayer rifle from, who got me out to 1,218 yards. Mike, thanks for joining
Uh,
us. And like I said earlier, thank you and your family so much for your hospitality when I was out there visiting. You guys were
so, but
absolutely amazing.
just because you get a gun that just might be on the edge, you might be able to make that difference up. And we're talking about hunting or even self protection. You might be able to make that difference up on bullet, right? I mean, If am I going to go out and shoot elk with, and we're thinking short distance with a 308, ball ammo, or am I going to go something a little different that's more designed for hunting? Yeah, I'm going to use the hunting round over ball
Of
ammo
course.
any day.
Yeah.
So those are some things that you want to think about, and we've got 5 minutes left here, so let's start. Let's start wrapping up here. So on my channel, we have I had a video just released a couple of hours ago about the AR Builder board. If you're new to AR building, it's kind of like a building class right
Hmm.
on your bench. That just released, but then we had the podcast coming up on Sunday that got recorded today, and well, I got to spend a couple more hours with this guy recording because Lupo joined me and we're talking a little bit about creating YouTube channels. Because last week we had Mike Kreitzer on, we were talking about getting your 2A voice, but your 2A voice you need a place to offload it at, so you could create a YouTube channel, and it doesn't have to be like, hey, our politicians suck. It could just be, hey, here's a gun. Here's how you use it. This is the uses of it. Exercising the voice is very, very important to do. So check that out on Sunday noon Mountain Time. And
Hmm.
Lupo, tell people a little bit about what's going on because you've been kind of disappeared because you've been moving, but you got
Oh,
some stuff coming up.
yeah. I have a lot coming up. So I did a lot of filming when I was out there with Mike in Oregon there, and so now that I'm kind of settling into my new place, I just spent the last couple of weeks moving, so I had to tear everything down, and I'm getting my studio back up here in my new place. So that's going to be one of my first videos I put up there is my quest to 1,000 yards. Um, and Mike just posted here that overkill is underrated. Better to
Yeah,
be overkill than underkill. So it's like always error in the side of caution and a bigger round. Um, so I'm looking forward to putting that up there. Um, we're going to be comparing multiple different guns together. I'm going to be doing a video on different types of um, furniture for the little badger. I got two suppliers who sent me some things. One of them is 3D printed, and they're really really cool. And we're going to talk about those. And then the other one are like machine milled and carbon fiber, and we're going to be doing a review on that. I've got Mantis dry fire coming up, so we'll be doing that review.
you have no
So
shortage
much.
of content. You have a shortage of time, not a shortage of content.
Very, very well put. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. There's a lot of stuff coming up, and also I'm very, very open. So if you want something reviewed, a product reviewed, or if, there are a lot of product reviews coming up, by the way, or you want something talked about, just shoot me a message over on Facebook at Lupo Outdoors, and or make a comment in one of my videos because I respond to all my comments, and I'll make it happen. You know, and I have my own podcast coming out before the end of this month.
Mike is cracking me up here. um, well, anyways, on that note, since we are running up with about a minute left, let's talk about what's going to be next week. So, for anybody that has not watched the show, what happens is we switch back and forth here. We like to switch it up on this show. So, one week, one of us might wear the strap on, the other one may not. But anyways, um, yeah, no, it don't happen.
I love you too,
But
Mike. Mike, you're one of the best people I know. You're so freaking
I
awesome.
know. So, so next week, so the person that's sitting in this spot chooses next week's topic that person right there has to now interview about, and I'm going to choose optics. We're going to talk about different types of optics, from red dots
Ooh.
to scopes and all that type of stuff. And my camera just died again. Um,
Ruh-roh.
no, I gotta find another solution for this. But anyways, um, definitely check us out next week when we talk about optics. When Lupo gets put in the hot seat and he has to interview me talking about optics.
It's gonna be
So
awesome because
everybody,
I love
every,
talking about optics.
I know you do. That's why I chose it. So everybody, thanks for joining us, man. Thanks for spending an hour on your Friday evening or afternoon, depending on what time zone you are. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
We'll see you again. Remember, like and subscribe to both of our channels if you haven't already do it. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you soon.